the male components of SMV. Just to make it clear that money and fame does not equal SMV, it equals RMV, as these are post-selection amplifiers of attraction and not what cause attraction. So what we're going to walk through exactly is the components of such SMV or RMV, the tiers of SMV, or should I say face ratings in this case, online versus offline SMV or RMV, and then of course the solution. Make sure you follow my TikTok and Instagram for extra value, link is in the description below. Stay tuned for my upcoming book, which will be released at some point next year, more details to be released soon. So the first component of male SMV is the face, of course, because it's the first thing you see. As you can clearly see, equal facial thirds are said to be the most attractive, and this is studied by the golden ratio. However, if you look at my face here, it is not quite completely even. As in, I would argue that no face is actually completely equal in the facial thirds, but as you can clearly see, my upper third is a lot larger than the other two. However, this is not a deal breaker, as there are plenty of attractive people who do not necessarily have equal facial thirds. Facial symmetry. Studies consistently show that facial symmetry is linked to attractiveness, health, and positive personality traits. Slight asymmetry is considered normal. However, larger deviations are perceived negatively. This matters more for men than women. If, as you can see on the picture on the left photo of the 3 pics of the same person is the most attractive. This is proof that facial symmetry matters a lot and can change the rating of one's face significantly. Male ones, like we said earlier, have a large importance of facial symmetry, whereas for female faces it is less important but still important. So I asked ChatGPT to rank the importance of facial features, and he says it is the eyes, the jaw, the hair, and then the mid-face. The reason being the eyes are the first thing that you can see when speaking to somebody. Jawlines obviously signal masculinity and of course good genetic fitness. Having good hair is also helpful, although there are people who can do well bald, and the mid-face is obviously important, but I still think it is secondary to the eyes and the jaw. Jeremy Meeks, however, can rock the bald look, obviously because he's top tier face. With the correct skull shape and proportions, some people can look very good bald. Component 2 is height. More than half of women on Bumble set their height filter to be 6 foot. As you can clearly see, I put the line here, the red line between 6 foot and 5'11". Height subconsciously signals male ability to protect mates. However, if in shape, behaves high status and handsome, short guys can still win. FitX Fearless, the famous YouTuber, is an example. Component 3 is the physique and physical frame. Studies show that a V-taper physique, broad shoulders and narrow waists are seen as the most aesthetically pleasing. Body fat percentage of between 10 and 15 is also ideal. As you can see, the 3 frames, mesomorph is the most attractive, with ectomorph second and endomorph last. Are dad bods attractive? The age-old question. Slight chubbiness is not the end of the world. As you can see, Jason Momoa, the Aquaman, and John Anthony Lifestyle, the dating coach, are slightly higher in body fat percentage. However, they still have a good physique and some definition. However, your classic big belly man there would not be considered attractive, because that is not what women mean when they say that they want dad bods. They are not outright lying to you, but people are misunderstanding what the term actually means. It just means like maybe early 20s body fat percentage with good muscle underneath. That is what a dad bod is, not your average big belly man at the pub. Component 4, style. Old money style gets results on dating apps. Style/light face app filtering can be make or break for normie tier looks men like me. Style can amplify physical looks but cannot compensate for a sub 4 bottom 25% face or height. Component 5, social proof and pre-selection. Having a social circle or other attractive women who want you is a form of pre-selection, especially if that social circle is of high status. Pre-selection has been proven with scientific studies. If others wanted the man, there is a good reason why. However, the opposite of this is poisoning the well, which is the opposite of pre-selection. Sorry for repeating myself. This happens if you get rejected by a woman in the social circle. So for example, If there is a social circle that connects, let's say, around 10 to 20 people, and the other women or men, let's say, find out that you were rejected by one of those women in that social circle, your chance of being able to find a mate in that social circle declines because they found out you were rejected. They might think maybe he's desperate, or maybe he's undesirable, which obviously copies onto other mates subconsciously. I had this experience myself when I asked a woman out twice and got rejected at school, which then led to my status lowering in that social circle and situation. This therefore prevented me from being able to obtain other mates, or in that circle at least. Component 6, behaviour-based status. Perceived status isn't just about money, fame, looks, or job title. You will always hear about alphas and betas if you spend any time in this space. Alphas are high status men in terms of behaviour. Confident, charismatic, charming, commanding, competent, etc. They use neutral or breaking rapport tonality more than seeking, which can signal high status. So these tonalities here. Betas are low status men in terms of behaviour, submissive, passive, self-deprecating, agreeable, cooperative, etc. They tend to use seeking rapport tonality, upspeak, which can signal neediness and low status. Deltas and gammas are medium status men, as you can clearly see here. Omegas are low status and are typically a less socially approved version of the beta male. Sigmas are like mid to high status men in terms of behaviour, but are more introverted than alphas. They are lone wolves instead of lions and tigers. Studies imply that alphas are the most universally attractive personality type for short-term mating. They are perceived to be high in social status, as you can clearly see here. However, I would also argue that this might be more of a long-term concept in a way, if we're talking about like the deep personality traits. But in terms of superficial appeal, then I would say it's short-term. Doesn't have to be literal fame. But like I said, this status concept alone will not make you automatically attractive, because obviously if the head teacher of a school would be considered attractive if that was the case. However, we can clearly see that is not. Behaving in a high status manner, however, will increase your chances with women and life in general. Component 7, money. Money, fame, global status is more relevant after selection than before. Relying on this alone attracts gold diggers and shallow connections. This increases RMV and not SMV. Never lead with your wallet, just use it to improve your life and finance necessities. Component 8, game. Game is building attraction through tactics. Push-pull disqualification, negging. Can work for hookups but do not sustain desire in LTRs as the mask will slip. High interest from day one is key for LTRs. PUAs often try and blame things like your frame using the game, but it's just a scam to keep you in the loop. It is an unfalsifiable theory and it rationalized failure with a rubbish explanation. Component 9, location. In liberal-minded countries such as the West or Japan and South Korea, more weight applies to looks. On the contrary, birth control can also make women gravitate towards beta traits and feminine facial features. Hence, the pretty boy K-pop look has been trending recently. Those faces signal high trust but low primality, but are seen as attractive for long-term mating. Traditional values not existing mean it is harder to lead with non-looks traits. This is not a value judgment, just the reality. I am not one of those bring back the patriarchy guys. The positive is that pay-to-pay relationships decline. If looks are suboptimal, Southeast Asia and Latin America are easier markets than the West or East Asia. Component 10 is personality and compatibility and emotional intelligence, often known as EQ, which is basically IQ but the emotional version. Now this is time for some blue pill, and this stuff matters a lot long term, as things like shared life goals and values become more important. But just like money, it is a post-sexual selection trait, not a before sexual selection trait. But of course, if there's no compatibility, there is no fulfilling LTR. Why my system is more accurate than the traditional red to black pill ones. Note the pill is blue and yellow as it represents my favourite train, the JR Yokosuka line. Other systems use the traditional triad of looks, money and status, the fame version. Mine understands that money doesn't create visceral attraction and can only create transactional or comfort-based attraction. Fame and money are mostly linked, but because fame is social proof, it creates visceral attraction a little bit but not as much as looks. So these are the officially recognised SMV components, and we're not including anything to do with RMV here. This is purely short-term mating only. However, to have a fulfilling LTR, most of the time you need to score highly on these SMV components to ensure like the polarity remains, like the masculine feminine polarity, as they like to say. So obviously face is 50% of it, I would say it's about half. Height is about 10%. Physique, style, behaviour, pre-selection will say are all 10% each. The reason I say face is number one is because it's the first thing that you see. But I still think that the importance of face is largely overestimated by black pill communities, and they ignore things like height, physique, and obviously style, behaviour, and pre-selection. The reason why I actually put a lot of these traits in the short-term box as well is because behaviours can actually be a short-term thing as well. Like I said, alphas are seen as the most attractive for short-term mating. But the thing that I would actually argue is that behaviour matters more in the long term. The things that matter in the short term are more visual, and all studies will literally show that hookups are more visual and visceral based. The reason why I put pre-selection as a short-term trait, or should I say social proof, is because it can actually help with SMV as well as RMV, but I think that's more of an RMV trait. So as you can see for height, there is the rating system. You can plug in your score for your height, whatever you believe it to be. And as you can clearly see, the average height for a man in the West is between 5'9 and 5'10, or otherwise 175 to 178 centimeters. Other attributes can't be fully objectively measured, and they are more subjective, so use intuition. So I won't be able to necessarily give an exact rating. If you want to rate your own physique, just look at this photo. Credit to Wheat Waffles for this video there. Use this photo and obviously determine where you stand based on these physique photos. So without further ado, we're going to give examples of face ratings. Warning, this advice is mostly applicable to short-term relationships. This chart will purely be based on face ratings and not SMV, as I don't have enough information on other attributes. This is not a value judgment of you, but how dating works in 2025, almost 26 now. Retention game will be discussed some other time, but you cannot have it without the SMV, otherwise it's just maxing or beta boxing. Tiers of looks. 8 plus is the top 1%, Chad Tyrone Chang. Typically a male model. Women lay out the red carpet for them on dating apps. They are like a pizza delivery service. Women stare at them in public and approach them. Compliments off the bat, elite facial harmony with very minimal flaws, and halo effect is widespread. The 7s range, which is often known as Chad Light in black pill communities, are highly attractive facially. Dating apps are very easy for them and do not need necessarily very good photos, although they can help. Stared at in public, women approach them sometimes. Compliments off the bat, great facial harmony with a few minor flaws. Halo effect comes into play starting here. So this is where the halo effect begins at around the top 5%. The 6s range, often known as high tier normies by the black pill community. Quite attractive facially. Dating app success starts at this level. Some compensation with face app or slight status signaling is required for it. They may have to date down in quality. So this is how rigged the dating market is in the West. Even being an HTN, you're having to date down already online. They can get success offline in warm environments. Obviously the 7s and 8s can as well. But 6s may have to rely on these environments a little bit more, where they can display charisma or status or other traits. Risk of jester maxing if not careful. They are only complimented occasionally or situationally. Good facial harmony with a few noticeable flaws, but a very little halo effect here. 5s range, often known as average. Average to above average facially. Very little results on dating apps. Commonly ghosted, flaked on, or outright aired/ignored. Can get success offline in warm environments where they can display charisma or status. Risk of jester maxing if not careful. However, these people, or people in this tier, should I say, this kind of rating, can get success on dating apps if they show off their car or wealth or pose in like suits in lobbies and lounges, which would be what we call beta boxing. However, based on pure physical appeal, this rating would not be considered high enough on dating apps. Rarely, if ever, compliments to looks, Average facial harmony, mix of good features and flaws. There is no halo effect here, but this is like what they would call mid-tier normie in black pill communities. This is slightly above average face, basically, and this is me here, and I would put myself around 5.5. Falls range, colloquially referred to low tier normie by black pill communities. So average to below average facially, very little to no matches on dating apps, can get success offline in warm environments where they display charisma or status or other traits. Risk of jester maxing if not careful, however even this now becomes difficult, but it's still not impossible. Practically never complimented on looks. Below average facial harmony but not ugly in the traditional sense, usually just under optimized. There is no halo effect here, but there is also no phalo effect either. Maybe a mild phalo effect, but it's not noticeable. This is probably the level I was at before I obviously began my looks maxing journey. However, I will admit so far it has just basically been skincare and natural facial development, and obviously growing a stubble to create the illusion of a jawline. I am still in the process of building my physique. Freeze range. Noticeably below average facially. Very little to no matches on dating apps. Even warm approaching would have low success rates. Practically never complimented on looks, negative remarks begin. Significantly below facial harmony here. The phalo effect starts here. Now this is where a lot of people, so like the normie community, would start using the word ugly. This is where obviously it starts to begin. The phalo effect is effectively the opposite of the halo effect. So at this level, it would be very hard to get a relationship. Like I said, warm approaching could work, but it would require massive compensation, whether it be through jest maxing or beta boxing. And now this is for the sub 3s, it's like 1s and 2s. So at this rating, you usually have genetic defects or deformities. Very little to no matches on dating apps. Even warm approaching, like I said, would have very low success rates, if not none. Mostly negative remarks about looks. Lowest tier facial harmony here. Phalo effect is widespread. Only positive is there could be some niche appeal in some communities due to the rarity of the rating, i.e. Zimbabwe's Mr. Ugly winners. So there could be very small niche appeal here. Online versus offline dating. Online dating is totally a looks-based game. Wealth signals can help but attracts gold diggers. Strictly 6+ SMV only unless compensating with extreme wealth signals. So based on that previous thing, just to clarify one more time, that was based on face only. So if you calculate your SMV by just measuring your face up against the ones I showed earlier, and then obviously plugging in the other values into the calculator using the weight, then obviously you'll be able to get your score. I will do a video on exactly how to calculate it some other time, the formula. Offline dating. Room for other traits such as personality, game, social status, but this risks low desired relationships. The disclaimer is that no matter who you are talking to, no matter how hot the woman is, you should never treat her as if she's above you. If you treat her like a celebrity, she treats you like a fan. Acting overly needy is low status. You do not need game, just act normal and the rest will follow. As long as you perceive yourself as the prize, or at the very least on even ground. The solution if you are below a 6. Exposure maxing from wee waffles. Approaching 100+ women during the day or night over time. Pros are it gives field experience and builds confidence. The cons are awkward moments could occur like boyfriend walking in. I've had to deal with that before when I was in Shibuya talking to some gyarus in obviously the shopping mall. But luckily I was able to pull out before the boyfriend comes. I didn't have to approach the woman as I found out in advance. Found out in advance that she had a boyfriend. Exposure maxing, social circles pre-selection, Michael Sartain. Building social circles via his course or other means. The pros are you are less reliant on looks alone, you can network with high status men too. Cons are that it's time consuming and could lead to artificial pursuit of hobbies you wouldn't do otherwise. Profile maxing. Using social media or dating apps to showcase an active lifestyle and building a high status profile. Pros, good camera angles boost SMV, online reach, convenient, every man must ascend. Cons, could lead to gold digging, beta boxing, if too many wealth signals are present. Also, Check my previous video for the results I got from using Bumble for 6 to 7 weeks as an average face man. With an optimized niche max profile, facial filters to boost my looks by 1 point, it's not quite catfishing but maybe a little bit, semi-formal and casual style, the funnel of interest levels. This will effectively show what online dating is like when you present your face as like a 6 out of 10 with decent profile pictures. Online dating is obviously a game of value and status and looks. It is literally just a market. Now, obviously before we wrap things up, make sure you like and subscribe, and obviously stay tuned for more videos. And of course, don't forget, Merry Christmas, everyone. That is the most important part. Thank you.